know that Nintendo is better than Disney. We all know that Super Smash Bros. Is better than Marvel, right? We all know that Nintendo's brand of iconic characters far surpasses Disney's entire lineup that they've acquired over the years. I'm talking Disney princesses, the Star Wars lineup, the Marvel thing. Disney can't do anything right. They are complete and abject failures in every single way. And I think it's time that we as a community come together and acknowledge that Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is a lesser game than Super Smash Bros. On N64. Or more specifically, Super Smash Bros. The Super Smash Bros. Brand in general. Like, it's time to acknowledge that Super Smash Bros. On 64 has better characters, better stages, better mechanics, more replay value, and more room for better sequels than anything Marvel vs. Capcom related. Right? When you play Marvel vs. Capcom 2, like, what do you see? You see a bunch of useless characters that nobody plays. You see a handful of Capcom characters that nobody remembers. Like, again, unless you're playing as an X-Man or like there's really no one cool in the Marvel vs. Capcom lineup. Like, none of the characters look good. They have terrible voice clips. This might work good. The combat is simplistic. The system, the fighting system is a little bit wonky, right? Like, MVC2 does not have the content, soul, and heart that Super Smash Bros. On N64 has, right? It doesn't even come close. Mario by himself is bigger than every single character in MVC2, right? That's just the reality of it. Iron Man, who the hell is that? Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has Mega Man. Actually, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has a bunch of characters in MVC2. Ryu, Ken, Mega Man. Like, all of them are way more well known and popular due to their role in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate than they ever would be in MVC2. Playing MVC2 for the first time, I realized that, like, wow, I really don't care about any of these characters at all. All of them are boring. They're forgettable. They're not fun to play. Like, the game is fast, but it's not all that deep, right? You play Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and you're just kind of like, oh wow, I could be playing something with better characters. I could be playing Dragon Ball Fighter Z, which is from a better fighting game company, which has better animation, which has a better lineup of characters. Dragon Ball by itself is better than anything the Western comic book industry has ever produced, right? So Dragon Ball Fighter Z is a better version of MVC2, right? And I could be playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, right? Which is like the best fighting game in the world right now. So much so that in the year 2024, I have no intention of ever buying new fighting games. Street Fighter 6 disappointed me. Tekken 8, not going to check that out. Like, why would I play a game with Kazuya from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate that isn't on a Nintendo platform? If it's not on a Nintendo platform, it just means that it's an inferior product. And Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is a really good example of a game that was hyped up by the FGC and by non-gamers, non-Nintendo fans, people who hate Nintendo, to gaslight people into thinking that there were good games on other platforms, right? Like, this is the thing we always deal with every single generation, is that everybody worships whatever game is coming out on the PS1, whether it's Final Fantasy VII or Metal Gear Solid or whatever, right? Anything that comes out. They all say the game is better than what Nintendo is putting out, and it just isn't true, right? But if you're the average fanboy, attending tournaments and getting trying to get good, trying to be competitive at this lesser fighting game, games like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, you never really come to terms with the fact that Super Smash Bros. Is better, right? So over the past 20 years, where Marvel vs. Capcom stagnated and became forgotten about, in spite of being initially very popular, Super Smash Bros. Has thrived to the point where it is the biggest fighting game franchise in the world and has become one of Nintendo's most iconic brands, right? And not only is it an iconic brand in its own right, it's introducing people to other iconic Nintendo brands. Most notably Fire Emblem, but I'm sure that's also becoming true of games like Dragon Quest, like Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid, Mega Man, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Pac-Man. It's keeping all of these forgotten, irrelevant, like video games of yesteryear alive, right? In ways that like PlayStation All Stars Battle Royale never could hope to, right? Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is just such a step beyond every other fighting game ever produced. It's kind of odd to think about just how other fighting games still exist because nobody plays about them, nobody talks about them, nobody remembers them at all. And like, seeing people like Max Dude come out and try to say that like, oh, MVC is a big deal, guys. Is it though? It's a re-release of a 20-year-old game, right? I bought it, I played it, I enjoyed it for what it was, but I would rather play Dragon Ball Fighter Z again. I would rather play I would rather play Super Smash Bros. Ultimate again, right? There are just so many more better games on better hardware. Like, why would I ever bother with something like this? Why would I ever bother with a game from Capcom? A company that has very rarely produced anything of value whatsoever. The most westernized of Japanese companies, I would say. Like, again, Capcom has had this really strong legacy of its fanboys protecting them from any criticism, but I do think this needs to be addressed. Is that like not only does Marvel vs. Capcom 2 not live up to the hype, it also has never resulted in anything of value from its series, right? Like when you the Capcom versus whatever thing, right? What has come out in recent years that has been relevant? Because I can tell you, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is not impressive. Infinite was a complete joke, right? Capcom's talking about sequels now, but we're t- we're in the post MCU period, right? Who exactly are they gonna get to be in a new Marvel vs. Capcom game? They haven't established any new IPs in like the past 20 years, right? What exactly would be in it, right? Like again, like that's kind of the issue that a lot of these crossover games are having right now is that like, well, Kingdom Hearts has like all these Disney characters, yeah, but nobody cares about the vast majority of Disney franchises aside from like a handful of like iconic ones, and you have like better alternatives with Super Smash Bros. Anyway. Super Smash Bros. Has essentially replaced Kingdom Hearts as being like the ultimate crossover game, right? Because it seamlessly blends so many different characters from so many different franchises together in one cohesive experience that will never be forgotten in the eyes of its player base, right? MVC has fallen off the map while Super Smash Bros. Melee is still being played in tournaments today, right? The difference in quality between Nintendo and Capcom cannot be understated, right? All Capcom had was legions of fanboys just worshiping everything they did for years. But here I am telling you that it was all a lie. MVC2 does not impress me. As a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate fan, I have seen and played better.